And I really didn't like the way he said that because, number one, the first thought in my head was, I'm pretty sure for the last 5 years, I haven't heard a whole lot of Indians players say, well, we would have won if Carrasco didn't suck. We would have won if Carrasco didn't go out there and blow another game or lose 17 starts in a row or whatever the various circumstances were, because that's not what you do. And I just thought, man, that irked me. In the middle of a pennant race, you're supposed to be pulling together and even more galvanized as a team. I thought that was kind of a Freudian slip of a bit of a selfish streak there. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know. I don't know if you heard that or not, and maybe I'm overreacting, but I mean, he point blank said it cost me 2 runs. And then he corrected himself in the next sentence and said it cost us runs. But, to say, I don't know. I'm not one for, especially when you've got quite a bit of bus that you're dragging behind you as far as baggage as well. I'm not a big fan of throwing other guys under the bus, and especially in a pennant race situation where everybody needs to be 100% moving on the same page.
Right. You definitely can't have that kind of a selfish attitude when you're thinking about winning runs and losing runs. What Carrasco needs to know is a couple things. One of them, those were not like real obvious errors. Those were very tough plays, and they would have been really good plays if they had been made, but it's not like the ball went right through these guys' legs. And the other one is Michael Bourne chased down what would have been an easy double or triple, but he made that play and saved Carrasco. So the good plays and the bad plays do all even themselves out, and if Bourne didn't bail him out, he would have given up 2 more runs. So,
how about Tyler Holt?
And, Carrasco has to realize if he's going to be, the whole season could come down to him on Sunday against Tampa Bay. We all need to be rowing the boat in the same direction.
It wasn't just that one, too. What about the other diving catch in the outfield? I believe it was Holt that made it, that saved at least 1 run when they were, it was the 6th inning, perhaps? I don't know if you remember. It was a very nice diving catch out there. And definitely cut the ball off in the gap. But I agree with you, man. I noticed it right away, and I'm like, did he really say that? Like, I know he corrected himself right away, but I'm just thinking, man, there's a lot of times that people could have took cheap shots. Yeah, it was Holt. I see Bruce in the chat room. Yeah, it was Holt that made that catch. And, I thought, man, there's a lot of opportunity over the last couple of years for people to pile on to Carrasco, and, maybe people on the outside did. But anyways, that's just a point that I made. I wasn't sure if anybody else caught that or whatnot. Talking about the iffy plays, I mean, the fact that, and this is one, although I may have to go on an Indians Twitter rant. Cleveland sports Twitter really is just the worst. Maybe they're all like that, but I swear I watched a bunch of guys last night be phony Indians fans for 3 hours and then do nothing but rake the team against the coals on Twitter. And I'm just like, sorry, man, that may be cute to your friends on Twitter. Maybe that gets you a few retweets, but that just makes me sick to my stomach when I see that stuff. And I'm like, and that's why a lot of these people, I don't take them seriously when they're running off at the mouth and sending comments during the show, because I see them and I don't know them, but I know how they reflect of themselves. But I'm watching it last night and like, I get it. I'm not saying you're not allowed to be a passionate fan. I'm not saying that you're not allowed to get mad and make jokes and all of that stuff, but it just turns so vile so quickly that it's like, come on, man. Like, that's not loyalty. You don't have to have blind loyalty, but just because you don't have blind loyalty doesn't mean you can't have none at all. But they don't know the difference, because I think a lot of these people on Twitter think that there's something wrong. You'll lose cool points if you go on Twitter and say, hey, go get them tomorrow, Indians. You have to go on there and say dumb things like, fire Terry Francona. I counted 53 tweets that referenced fire Terry Francona in the first 20 minutes after yesterday's game. I'm telling you, some of these people out there are absolutely ridiculous. I saw so many blaming Terry Francona for costing the Indians the division. I'm telling you, and some of these people are quote-unquote bloggers with a big audience out there that think they're, mini experts or whatever. And meanwhile, Mike Brandenberry blows them away. But anyways, some of these guys, I'm telling you, you listen to brother. you'd have thought that if anybody other than Terry Francona managed the Indians, they'd have won 110 games this year. Murderer's Row. It was Terry Francona that chose to have Chris Jimenez on his roster and J.B. Shuck. I will say this. What the hell was J.B. Shuck doing playing in a game that means anything for my Indians, man? I mean, I didn't think he had a hit the whole time he was an Indian, but apparently there is one that I lost track of there somewhere because he's like one for his whole tenure with the Indians. So, you know, but again, I don't think Terry Francona knocked on the door 3 weeks ago and said, you know what I could use? Chris Jimenez and J.B. Shuck. Can you hook me up with that? So, but anyways, I did. I saw a flood of tweets from quote-unquote experts and people that are just like the Indians front office. They live and die by the big metrics and all the new metrics and all the fancy numbers and stuff that at the end of the day, I like some of that stuff, but some of it I don't. Some of it, to me, was invented by guys that weren't good enough to be athletes and actually play the game. So they came up with ways to quantify what the actual athletes do and make themselves important. That's where I think a lot of those metrics came from. But that's just my own opinion, and you could think I'm wrong. I don't care. A lot of people do. But anyway, so I saw a lot of that, man. I'm telling you, bro. Go hashtag search like Francona and then just look through the last 24 hours if you don't believe me and click on all tweets, not just tweets of people that you follow, and you will see dozens and dozens of them that say some equivalent of fire Terry Francona. He mismanaged another game. I'm telling you, this was Murderer's Row if we didn't have Tito, according to Twitter. So that's my point when I say I get disgusted at, in general, Cleveland sports Twitter after games. I can't stand the way they talk about their own teams. I get it. You're upset. Say it was a bad game. Say that we got to do better. But, I mean, just some of the things, and some of them are so vile. And I'm like, get out of here. 5 minutes ago, you know, if that guy gets a hit, you would have washed his car for the next 100 years for him for free. And now, you know, he's the biggest piece of trash you've ever seen, and he's not worth 2 nickels rubbed together. Anyways.
Well, the thing about Twitter is you can just express your most raw nerve, gut, gut feeling, that just comes right, a knee-jerk reaction. That's what I'm trying to say. The biggest, quickest knee-jerk reaction, it's pretty much the equivalent of yelling at your TV. You yell at your TV, right. You can bam out a tweet and hit, it's not like you're writing a letter in pen and then, should I send this or should I not? Or even a long email. You can just wham out tweets as quickly as possible, and it just reflects what's going on in your emotions, and it doesn't have, sometimes it doesn't have any bearing on reality whatsoever. And I'll go on record that anybody who thinks that Terry Francona should be fired should definitely have their head examined by a medical professional, because not only does he have 2 World Series on his resume, but he's brought Cleveland to 2 winning seasons out of 2. I mean, that's as good as he can possibly get. And any other manager would not have done half what he's done. He's put this team together and dragged this anemic offense to the finish line, putting the lineup together with chewing gum and chicken wire, and somehow he's got us in a position where it's still possible that we can make the playoffs. I mean, I've been a proponent of Francona from day one, and I will not back off that. That's crazy.
I'm telling you, if you think I can read you some of these. Oh, no, but I want to read some of these on the air. Here, first one, does Terry Francona come back next year? I'm telling you, I mean, you that's just the first one when I look this up here. Terry Francona, once again, mismanaged the bullpen.
No. Eric Wedge, no. Other guy, it's like, he's done the best with his team in the last 15 years.
Brother, I know. You're talking to the guy who thinks he did a better job this year than he did last year. But I had to bring that. I've got my list here, and I go, if you get a chance, rant on Cleveland Indians Twitter after last night's game. I mean, if you want to be mad that they didn't go get the bat that you wanted them to get or whatever, that's fine, But to me, to blame it on Terry, I'm telling you, and there are some, and this is the shame when I say bad media creates bad fans, there are some very highly read bloggers out there that blog about Cleveland sports that have a very high volume audience. So they have a lot of people who listen to what they say, and they lead the bandwagon on dumb expressions like that, where they'll pull out the metrics to explain to you where the Joe Blow JV coach could have got 25 more victories than, Terry Francona did because he missed all-star talent that the Indians gave him.
Huh. Well, the thing with this is, you have to be a reliable source. You've got to show that you're not always going to look everything through rose-colored glasses. You're not always going to be running the team down. You've got to come from some semblance of intelligence and some semblance of track record as far as, wins and losses and really the kind of stats that mean something, so that, your readership will believe you when you say that things are still all going okay, and they'll believe you when you say that the sky is falling.
Yeah, it's called credibility, man. That's why I try to make sure that, I always make sure to point out when I'm right and when I'm wrong. I point out when I'm wrong more than I do when I'm right, because that to me says, hey, man, clearly if I'm the first one to tell you I'm wrong, then obviously I'm not, sitting here pulling your strings. You know what I mean? I'll be the first one to tell you that I got that wrong, But that tripped me out last night. Yeah, the Indians in the offseason, regardless, I think we all know. I think with this team, you add another pitcher because you're going to, obviously, they brought up yesterday, Indians brought up yesterday, no matter what, you can't do what we did last year, which is think that what we've got is enough. Look at the 5 that are ending the season, not the same as the 5 that started the season. So you need more pitching in the offseason, and they know that they need to get a bat. There's going to be some guys moving around. Wouldn't be surprised at all. I'm telling you, I don't think Bruce's idea of moving him to third base is in any way logical, but I do think that Jason Kipnis does not play second base next year. I think it's very likely that we see him move perhaps into the outfield if he's even still on this team, but I just don't think the Indians can trade a guy that they just committed a long-term deal to. I think it's a bad look to the other guys on the team, and I think they still believe that there's a good bounce back left in Kipnis, and I'm in that camp too. I'm not going to say that he's a total just bust out, man. I think that there's a good season left in him next year. I mean, not just one. I don't mean it like that. I mean, I think he's going to bounce back next year. It may not be as high end as some people thought, but I think there'll be a decent Kipnis season. But we've seen Ramirez, and they've got some guys that can play multiple infield positions. They want to try to find a way to get Lindor up. I mean, I don't think Kipnis is in the infield very much next year. I think he's an outfielder who occasionally can play second base for you, and I think that will make the Indians' infield defense better by default right there, making that change. So there's going to be a lot of changes. We don't know as far as that, but I mean, obviously, I think a bat needs to be somehow acquired and brought in here because, for years, the big right-handed power bat is the one thing that's been missing. I noticed, too, I saw a couple of people going back and forth with one of the Indians writers on the Plain Dealer website, but some good points were being made up, too, about how, and maybe this is part of my problem with the Indians front office, is they are a big relier on the advanced metrics, the sabermetrics, all of that stuff. Like, they are one of the biggest proponents of that. They have one of the largest staffs in Major League Baseball of people whose whole job it is those advanced analytics and stuff, but I think they rely on it too heavy, because I mean, you look at some either that or, well, I'm not even going to go into the other argument when it comes to, ownership, because the ownership spending money is one thing, but the occasional times that they do spend money, you can't screw it up and spend it all wrong, which is as big of a problem as anything else, it doesn't matter. Okay, maybe they only open the checkbook every 5 years, but when they do, you can't bring in bad groceries, Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's and that situation when you make such a big purchase like we did, a couple years ago, that's got to last you for a long time. And I think that coming into this season, remember, we really weren't worried about this offense. We thought they were pretty loaded up very well. We thought this was kind of almost a slump-proof offense where you could get 5 guys going, and maybe even if 2 guys were slumping, you'd have enough. But I don't think anybody anticipated how bad this offense was going to be. Really, the only 2 consistent hitters all year long, as far as staying healthy and hitting consistently, have been Michael Brantley and Jan Gomes. I mean, even as well as Carlos Santana's stats of
starting to look huge the season. That led to a lot of losses that the team has been digging themselves out of, trying to make this furious run down the stretch. And it's going to be a matter of finding guys who are going to be able to perform consistently. And, just based on money and based